Hi and good morning. I'm Alan Bushong. I'm Executive Director of Capital Community Television, and I'm welcoming you to Salem Eclipse 2017. And if you're in Salem, who could possibly not know that today is the day of the total solar eclipse? We'll be on Channel 21 live for the next 3 hours to give you the best look possible at the sun and the eclipse. And we're joined by CCTV volunteer Brad Wortman and his friend Tim Lockram. They're up on the roof taking a look at this. They'll be carrying almost all the conversation today as they tell us what's happening from an astronomy and an enjoyment point of view. So I want to welcome Brad and Tim.
Well, thank you, Alan. Oh, wait a minute. Hi, Alan, and it's good to be here today. I want to welcome everybody here to the Great American Eclipse of 2017 on a beautiful sunny day here in Salem, Oregon. I'm here with my good buddy and longtime friend and fellow astronomy geek, Tim Lockram. Say hi, Tim.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, all right, Alan, and we'll go back to you.
Well, great, thank you. And I want to, first of all, welcome friends from out of town. We know that there are a number of community TV and community media centers that are going to carry the signal either on their channels or on the web. And that includes Ashland, Foxborough, Northeastern, Peabody, and Somerville in Massachusetts, the state of the great franchise fee law. So there's so many wonderful community media centers. Brattleboro in Vermont, Olympia in Washington, our good friend Deb Vinsel there, maybe Sacramento, but Santa Barbara in California, Gresham in Oregon, Duluth in Minnesota, and Campbell County, Kentucky, which is just across the state line from Cincinnati. So welcome to our friends from across the country. We work hard to do a good job with community-based media, and they're doing terrific jobs in their communities too. Let's go back up to the roof, and I'm wondering, first of all, Soha, if we can see a little bit wider shot from Deontay that can show people a little bit of that setting that Brad and Tim are in. Is that possible to take a look and see our NASA dish and a little bit more of the what we have up on the roof? Okay, there we go, and you're going to see Brad's telescope. Is there a way to go out even wider so we can see the NASA dish that's over there to the left? Maybe we'll get a chance to see that later on. Well, there we go, and there it is. And Brad, I want to kick it back to you, and people are now seeing you in the Science Center of CCTV.
Well, thank you, Alan. We are just awaiting the first contact of the sun. It's now 9:03 a.m. First contact is going to be at 9:05, 25.6 seconds. So we're just a little more than 2.5 minutes away.
Brad, could I very rudely cut in here and just say that I forgot to say one thing. I want to thank the City of Salem and Marion County for their terrific preparation preparing this community. There are very few difficult traffic spots in our area now. They're mainly around the Oregon State Fairgrounds where there is an eclipse viewing party. We want to say they did a great job, and all local residents, by gassing up and going to the grocery store early. The roads are really good in Salem right now. You're all to be thanked. Hope you're all at home watching the eclipse, if not live on CCTV. Sorry, Brad, going to send it back to you.
No, that's good, Alan. Thanks, and it really is wonderful to see that people have been so careful and so respectful of everybody around for our guests in the area. We were driving down High Street this morning on the way here past Bush Pasture Park and saw, I don't know, Tim, what, maybe 50 or 60 tents that were all set up. You know, and people were lining up on the west side of the park with their chairs and with their kids, and it just is really going to looking like it's going to be a great day. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful sunny day out here. It's just amazing. So we are just now 2 minutes away from first contact, and what we're going to be doing is that first contact we're going to switch over to our telescope view, and what you'll see in the first few moments is when the moon actually touches the face of the sun and begins the whole eclipse cycle. And that's going to go on until second contact, which is at 10:17:20 in the morning, and that's going to be at the point at which the eclipse totality starts. And that we're going to be in totality for I think it's about 1 minute and 55 seconds, and then we come out of total eclipse at 10, 19, 15, and then we will be out at the end of the partial eclipse cycle at 11:37:50. So we've got a ways to go here this morning, but the excitement builds here as we get up to the very first part. So we're at 9:05:30, so we got just 1 minute left to go. Tim, is there anything you want to tell us a little bit about you? You and I have had a long history together.
Well, we go back to 1979. We met at the University of North Dakota. You had just come up to grad school. I was just finishing up my undergrad degree in geology. And we've just had a friendship since that point, yeah.
Well, 1979 is also important because you were there for the last major total solar eclipse, right?
Yes, yeah. I drove up to Winnipeg with my family and some friends and saw the eclipse in Winnipeg in February of 1979.
Okay, so it's now 9:06. We are just starting into the total eclipse cycle, and you won't see much at the beginning here, but you'll start noticing. Oh, let's go to the telescope. So let's go to the star of the show. And you'll see that in the upper right-hand corner, you notice how the sun looks a little flatter? That's the moon. That's the moon beginning to cross over into the surface of the sun. And this is being taken from our telescope shot. Here we have a 5-inch celestron, and so the yellow disk is the sun, and you'll probably notice on the disk of the sun there's going to be some little dark dots, and those are sunspots. And the sunspots are good. Tim, you're the solar astronomer. Tell a little more about what sunspots are and how they form.
Well, they're a disturbance on the sun, a magnetic disturbance where the surface of the sun is somewhat cooler than the rest of the surface of the sun, so they appear dark by contrast. They're not really dark. They're just dark in comparison with the rest of the sun.
Cooler areas.
Cooler areas, yeah.
And
the moon is partly covering the sun now, right?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we are, so we're just, you can definitely see the moon now crossing into the sun.
Brad, this is Alan. I think this is a good opportunity also to remind people the importance of using their protective eyewear.
Right.
Almost all the sun's brightness is still reaching the Earth, and it will be for a long time, so it's critically important that any viewing be done with approved eyewear.
Right, and here's, we can, if you want to cut to a shot, here's a pair of glasses. Hopefully some of you've gotten these. You could have picked these up at Ross in the area here, or at McDonald's, or any number of places for about $1 or $2 each. And you just got to make sure you wear these when you're looking at the eclipse. And if you're like me and you've got glasses, you got to make sure you wear them on the outside of your glasses. You don't want to wear them on the inside of your glasses, because that can cause just as many problems. But do not look at the sun for any reason for any period of time, because it'll harm your eyes. We're able to do this because our telescope has a special solar filter on it, and if you could just pan up for a second up to give us a shot of the telescope, so you can kind of see what our rig looks like. Okay, so could you cut back to the telescope, or cut back to the main desk view, I guess, for us. Oh well. Yeah. So you can see over here is our telescope. Can you pan out just a little bit? Yeah. So we've got this telescope, and you can see there's actually a camera mounted on top of the telescope too, and we've got this special filter that's right on the front of it, and that filter is it lets in, I think it's 0.001 of 1% of sunlight, and that's what's giving us our image, our view of the solar eclipse. Okay, so let's go back to the star of the show. And Tim and I were talking about what to discuss here this morning, and we have a lot of fun facts that we could bring up with people. So let's kind of go through that. So like I said, the totality here this morning is going to be about 1 minute and 55 seconds. We have, oh gosh, this is the first transcontinental solar eclipse in 99 years. The last solar eclipse that crossed the U.S. total solar eclipse was in 1979, which is the one that Tim saw. And the next solar eclipse that's going to cross the U.S. is going to be in 2024. And that's going to be across the southeastern U.S. from starting in Texas, and it's going to go all the way up through Maine and up to the maritime provinces. Now, that's for a total solar eclipse. The next solar eclipse of any kind is going to actually be in 2023, and that's going to be again here in Oregon. But it's not going to be a total solar eclipse because it's going to be a different kind of eclipse, which is what's called an annular eclipse. And you have to remember when you're talking about eclipses of the sun or the moon, it all has to do with celestial mechanics. That is the relationship of the sun to the moon and the earth. And because the moon is on a slightly different elevation, a different plane than the plane from the sun to the earth, we get total solar eclipses about or an eclipse of some kind about every 18 months. And sometimes those are total eclipses, but if the moon is if the distance isn't quite right, then the moon won't completely cover the sun, and you get what's called an annular eclipse. And
Basically, the orbits of the moon around the Earth and the orbits of the Earth around the sun are slightly ecliptical. They're not perfectly circular.
Right.
So at some point in the moon's orbit, it's at the furthest point from the Earth, and then 6 months later, it's at its closest point to the Earth. And the same with the Earth and the sun. So it depends on those distances how big each of those images appears in the sky.
Right, right. And the one and only eclipse I've been to was in 2012, and it was an annular eclipse. It was out in eastern Nevada, and it covered, I think, 99.2% of the sun, and it would have been great. You know, it was really nice getting up to the maximum coverage, and then right as the maximum coverage hit, we had a bunch of clouds come in, which is something that happens with eclipses. I mean, you have to figure that they say that during a total eclipse, temperature will drop between 10 and 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can get things like local cloud formations springing up from sudden cooling off of the earth and water vapor in the air. I mean, right now we have clear skies, but if we look off to the east, we can actually see some really high, thin cirrus clouds. But luckily, we're going to be able to cut through all that. So anyway, the eclipse in 2023 is going to be an annular eclipse, and I think, if memory serves, it's going to cover about 88 or 89% of the sun. But the cool thing about it is it's going to cross over Crater Lake, and for those of you who are familiar with Oregon, that's our one and only major national park. But it's going to cross over Crater Lake, and it's going to cross over through Lakeview, and then go down into Nevada. And it's going to the advantage of an annular eclipse is that the path is much wider. Here we have a pretty narrow path. I think it's 70 miles.
The path of totality, yeah, it's pretty narrow, yeah.
And the path of totality is again dependent on the celestial mechanics, because the closer the moon is to the Earth, the wider the path of totality. And the period of totality then is the time that it takes the moon to actually cross from end to end across the sun. Oh, here we have a plane flying. You know, it was a little earlier we were getting set up, and we were watching this, and we actually had a plane fly right in front of the sun. I don't know, Alan, do you think we could get a hold of those guys real quick? And get them to cooperate with us?
Reroute that flight.
Reroute that flight? No.
So you can see now the moon has taken quite a bite out of the sun already.
Yeah, I would say this is what, about 10% now, maybe. It grows on you amazingly fast. You know, you'll see the first 10%, and then you'll see the next. You know, we'll get up to about 25%, and then once you get to about 50% totality, you'll see it starting to get noticeably dimmer outside. And one of the things you can do if you have trees, and gosh, we've got a lot of trees out here, is to go out and look at the shadows that are being cast as the sun filters its way through the leaves on the trees. Because what you'll find, you look at the ground, if you have like a white piece of paper, especially to help make it better, but if you look at the ground, you'll see thousands of little crescents as this eclipse goes on, from the leaves filtering, from the sunlight filtering through the leaves and causing little tiny mini eclipses views of their own.
The intersections, the gaps between the leaves serve as a little pinhole.
Right.
So it's a bunch of pinhole projections. Is how it works.
And that's a good lead in to talk about how to watch the sun. I mean, you can use the eclipse glasses that we've already discussed. The other option is to create what's called a pinhole camera. And a pinhole camera is pretty easy to do. You basically get a box or 2 pieces of paper, and white paper, and if you have a box, you put a sheet of white paper in one end of the box, and then in the other end of the box, you literally just put a pinhole into the side, and then you hold the side with the pinhole facing the sun, and you can then cast a projection, an image of the sun onto that white piece of paper, and you can actually see the eclipse as it's forming. So there's multiple ways to look at them, and let's see. What other?
Let's go back to that annular eclipse in 2023. So, what that'll look like then, when the moon's apparent diameter in the sky is slightly smaller than the sun's diameter. So the moon will cover the sun, but you'll still have a complete ring of sunlight around the edge of the moon during what would be totality.
Right. They call that the ring of fire, and I think that's a really cool thing to look at. You know, it's you can see prominences and flares that are coming off the sun. With a little luck, we'll get to see. We might be able to get to see something here today, but so far I'm not seeing any flares or any prominences. Although, if you look down at the very bottom of the picture, you'll see what looks like a little lump on the sun, a little projection from the bottom, and that is a solar flare. Okay, so some other eclipses to talk about. So if anybody's wanting to travel and wants to go see, you're enthralled by the eclipses, there's going to be another one in 2019, July 2nd in Chile and Argentina, or if you're lucky, out in the South Pacific. And then again in December of 2020 in the South Pacific and South Atlantic. For those who are really adventurous, in 2021, there's going to be one in Antarctica. I think we should go to that one.
That would be a fun trip.
Yeah, let's just do that. Okay. And then in 2024, there's the next one, which is going to be in New Mexico, U.S. and Canada, throughout the south or the eastern U.S. But anyway, the bottom line is there are always eclipses. There's one about every 18 months. And one of the things they talk about is that this eclipse follows what's called the Saros cycle, and that is a timed interval. I think it's 18 years, 11 months, 8 days, and I can't remember how many minutes. But this eclipse follows what's called a Saros cycle, and I'm going to look it up here.
Getting there. Let me take these.
Thanks. So we've got a lot of things we can talk about here. We've got misconceptions, safety we talked about. Yeah, let's talk about misconceptions. So here's some things that people take note of when you're looking at eclipses. Number one is that total solar eclipses produce harmful rays that cause blindness. No, the sun produces harmful rays that cause blindness, but thankfully, you know, if the sun is covered by the moon, you're blocked from those rays. But the important point here is that, again, you cannot look at the sun until the moon has gone into full eclipse. And right now, we're not at that point. And as we get closer to the end here, to totality, we'll talk about that a little more.
Normally, normally the sun is too bright to look at, right? That's why we don't look at it. But when it gets to 80, 90, 95% totality, it's dim enough you can look at it, but you don't want to because
Right.
it will damage your eyes for sure.
Right. Either at least temporarily or permanently damage your eyes.
Yep.
Another question people have, misconception, is says if you're pregnant, you should not watch an eclipse because it can harm your baby. Well, I was not born during an eclipse, and I'm fine, thank you very much. But it said, this is related to the idea that harmful radiation is emitted during total solar eclipse, and we've already talked about that. Another misconception that eclipses will poison any food that's prepared during the event. When did we make those bagels this morning?
Early enough.
Early enough, yeah. So again, no, there are no harmful rays. Eclipses are another misconception. Is that eclipses are harbingers of something very bad that's about to happen, and that's interesting because there's there's several cultural aspects to eclipses. And for instance, I was just listening to NPR yesterday morning. They were talking about how the Navajo tribes really see eclipses as a bad omen because they see the light as good and the dark as basically as evil. And my apologies to anybody who's Navajo that I haven't explained that exactly right, but the general concept is that that the sun is good and darkness is bad, and I believe that's also true. You went to a talk last night, Tim, at the local Chabad Jewish Center to talk about the mystical aspects of solar eclipses, and that was one of the things you guys discussed, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, and then what'd they say?
Well, they talked about how many cultures view an eclipse as a bad omen because the sun is covered and the sun is life and light. And I'm probably not explaining it very good, but yeah, many people view it as a bad omen.
Yeah, and throughout time that's been the case. In fact, one of the earliest records of eclipses was in Chinese story about two astronomers who failed to predict an eclipse that occurred, and as a result, they were beheaded. So, thankfully, we don't have to worry about that. And speaking of the Chinese and the history, so let's talk a little bit about eclipse history and how long have eclipses been talked about in our human history, and amazingly, it goes back to all the way to 3340 BCE, which is 5,400 years ago, and there were monoliths and petroglyphs at the Caim megalithic monument in Ireland that showed 92 tracks of total solar eclipses. So, given that every one of these occurs every 18 months, in Ireland alone, that this had to go back a very, very, very long time. Chinese records go back to 2134 BCE, where records said it included a passage that translates into English as the sun and the moon did not meet harmoniously. And as I mentioned, they were signs that foretold the events for the emperor. So failure to accurately predict an eclipse was considered very bad, and 2 people were beheaded. I'm going to take a break here and just talk about. So it looks like back to our picture. So we are now at about probably what, Tim, you say 20?
Probably 20, maybe 25%.
Maybe 25%. So it just creeps up on you, and we are just cranking right along. So more historical. There are Babylonian clay tablets from dating from 1700 to 1681 BCE. The first written records from kind of more modern times were back in the 1400s, from Latin translations. The Greeks started recording eclipses starting around 460 BCE, and even Ptolemy, the famous Greek astronomer, around 150 CE recorded his observations and showed he has a sophisticated scheme for predicting both lunar and solar eclipses.
Okay. Brad, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We're going to cut away a little bit now. We're going to take a look at, this is terrific. Gosh, and looking at the shot of the sun, I keep calling it the moon, right? Because the only thing I've ever seen that looked like that's the moon. So Kirami lets us know that we have 237 people watching on YouTube right now. Facebook Live has been shared 20 times with multiple comments. People are watching from as far away as Madrid. So we want to welcome everybody to Salem. We wish you could be with us in our community, and we're glad to share our community with you in this way. We're going to take a little bit of look. We are a state capital area. So Soha, I'm going to ask Soha, our director, if she and Sharam can team up to show us a little bit of what downtown looks like right now. We're going to work to keep the sun in the shot at all times. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Salem's downtown. Still pretty bright. Even with that amount of the sun being shadowed by the moon, we're still fairly bright. While we're looking at that, I'll just let you know again that traffic in our community is very light. There was a lot of concern. Certainly parts of eastern Oregon, smaller cities, smaller communities have been flooded by vehicles.
Does it?
But
Does it save the photo? Does it save?
But not in Salem. Traffic is very light in Salem.
Oh shoot! We have to hit what?
Okay, and it looks like we need to bring down Brad and Tim's mics right now.
You took a picture.
Brad and Tim, we're going to pull your microphones down right now so we don't hear what's going on the roof.
Thanks.
And let's see, are we able to get a Sharam shot, even if you need to go full screen, a Sharam shot of our state capitol community? Okay, here's the Golden Pioneer on top of the Oregon State Capitol building. And let's try to see a little bit more of the downtown. You can see that even with an eclipse going on, we've still got a terrific amount of sunlight. We're right now having the partial that many communities, that's all they'll have today is a partial. And I think Brad said we're about 30% in. We are very close to the center of the band though, so we'll have total, as Brad and Tim has said, for almost 2 minutes today. Can we see a little bit more of the downtown area? Okay, and start panning a little bit to the left here. And we actually may have to iris this camera up a little bit because it was just so much sky there to get the state capitol building. But now we're looking at downtown Salem, the First Methodist Church, passing the church. There's our Starbucks on the north side of CCTV, and just keep going through downtown Salem. The Mattingly mural, the incredibly beautiful Mattingly mural on the back of the historic Elsinore Theater. And you can see again, even with about 30% partial, it looks like the same amount of light as if we had a small amount of haze. And we're getting over, and now we can see, got the sun back in the shot as we move past and all the way to Sharam's Mountain Dew. All right, thank you for showing us that look at downtown Salem. What I'd like to do now, if we can pop up traffic, let's go ahead and take a look at the traffic intersections that we have. All right, and if you can put the sun back in, that would be great too. These are still shots only, so for people around Salem, if you're taking a look at this, this is less traffic than we would normally have at this time. Lancaster and Center, one of the busiest intersections in Salem at Lancaster Mall. Here we are, Center and 17th Street. Again, there's a lot of people that have stayed home. Not as many people working today also, as we look very close here to CCTV. Commercial and Mission, again, that's an intersection you would expect to see stopped well back. Close to my house, Commercial and 12th Street, not a single car on Commercial Street there, nor at where Kubler intersects with Interstate 5. Now looking up in Woodburn, they're either all at the mall or they're watching the eclipse. Normally you'd expect to see so much more traffic. And here's the Portland Road exit in Salem. You can see very little traffic there. And Mission Street, just a little bit more traffic at Mission Street. Back to Kubler and looking northbound on I-5, just absolutely nothing at all. And now here going out to the fairgrounds where there are a lot of people watching the eclipse, and Silverton Road, not much at all. Now we're to Commercial and Market Street. Again, these are primary intersections that we're taking the Oregon Department of Transportation, the ODOT feed on, Market and 17th, and you would think that it was, that everybody was out at the coast today, that it was perfect weather out at the coast and that everybody had taken off. So I want to thank the crew. It's so hot. Thank you for showing this look. You can just see that right now traffic is extremely light in Salem. As Brad says, we are thankful for that. Well, we're getting ready to go back up to the roof. We've given Brad and Tim a little bit of a break, but go ahead and keep interacting with us on Facebook. We like to hear from you. We'd like to show you the best possible that we can of this incredible opportunity. And we're pledging that CCTV will do the next one, the next Coast to Coast, which Brad, what, is 99 years from now, the next time one starts in the Pacific and ends in the Atlantic. And we're going to show that one for you too, but I think we'll probably have a somewhat different crew. Let's get ready to go.
You.
We're back up on the roof now with Brad and Tim.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. And we're back. And gosh, now we are definitely getting into the meat of the passage of the partial eclipse. We're probably around 25 to 30% right now. And as we go along, as I was mentioning, I started to mention earlier, there's eclipses happen about every 18 months, but even the same eclipse path has a general track that reoccurs over and over again. And that is that pattern is what's called the Saros cycle, S-A-R-O-S. And the Saros cycle is approximately 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours in length. And one Saros period, every Saros period, the Earth, Sun, and Moon return to approximately the same relative geometry. And to give you an idea about that, so this particular solar eclipse is part of the Saros 145 series, and that was first the previous total solar eclipse in this series was on August 11th of 1999. Obviously not here in the U.S., but it was in another part of the world. The next one in this cycle will be in September 2nd, 2035. And I think if I remember right, that's the one that goes through Argentina and the South Pacific. And the first cycle in this series occurred in January 4th, 1639. And the last one in this cycle will be in April 17th, 3009. And if Alan's willing to pick up that one in 3009, I'll do my best to be there, as will Tim. So, but I think one of the things that you can take away from this when you're talking about solar eclipses is that just how precise the measurements for this are. I mean, we can not only get to the exact day, year, the day, the time of day for a specific eclipse, but we have eclipses that have been tracked for thousands of years, over and over and over again. And so it's one of the most reliable measurements we have. And as such, eclipses have been really important in astronomy. For instance, when Einstein first proposed his theory of relativity, it wasn't until we had a solar eclipse that we were able to prove one of the facets of the theory of relativity, because as the moon goes across the sun, it bends, it occludes stars. The moon occulate
Passes in front of.
passes in,
basically.
occultation passes in front of stars and the sun, and you could actually measure the amount of light that was being bent by the gravity of the moon and of the sun from those as it was passing in front, and that helped prove the theory of relativity. So, even though solar eclipses have been around for thousands of years, they are very, very important for astronomers. And even today, we're still using them. I mean, I know that NASA has 2 specially modified jets that they're setting up, so that while you and I on the ground may only get a couple of minutes to watch totality, these jets are going to provide about 7 minutes of totality, and they're just loaded with instruments that are taking different readings and such. And I'm going to apologize right now. You can see that the image on the camera is the telescope is shaking a little bit. That's because it's getting kind of windy up here. We probably have about 15 or so miles per hour of wind, maybe 15 to 20 miles an hour of wind. But as long as we don't get blown off the roof, we're going to still be here. So let's see, what other things can we talk about? Well, we are definitely now probably more than 1/3 into totality. Crew out here, we're out taking photos and taking a look at, we've got a set of binoculars up here as well that people can look through, and
With filters on them, of
with
course.
filters on them, of course. And we are just going to wait and see what comes of all this. I think can we go back to the studio for a minute, Alan?
Yes, we are going to go back. And Brad, we're going to take you and Tim off camera here, but I'm going to ask you a couple things.
Sure.
After we return, we're going to give you a little bit of a break. If people saw other people walking around up on the roof, there are some people from the Salem Information Technologies Department that are up there. CCTV is in a condominium 5-floor building. We're almost all of the first floor. Salem IT is the second floor, and there are residents that are up on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floor. It's been a terrific center for CCTV, and we've really enjoyed being neighbors with Salem IT and our 27 residential unit owners. When we get Brad and Tim back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some changes that you may be seeing that I've seen too. We're going to talk a little bit about why are we getting new dark spots or dark spots we didn't see before. Talk a little bit about those sunspots and sun flares. We want to give them a little bit of a break here. Again, you're watching CCTV either on channel 21 in Salem, and we are standard definition. And by the way, very soon we're going to be going high definition on 22 and then on our other channels as quickly as possible. But Brad, we're getting some data feed there on, just so you'll know, some data feed on the screen, so thanks for taking that off. This is about half the CCTV staff working today, and I want to thank Mike, Soha, Luis, Megan, and Sharam for joining me here. As many of you know, we anticipated a lot more traffic, potentially being an emergency information center, so we're keeping half the staff for the rest of the week because we're open Tuesday through Saturday. But it's such a treat to have such a beautiful day, to have such a beautiful view of the sun, and to have half the staff here and a lot of volunteers. Not only Brad and Tim on camera, and Brad's significant Martha is here helping, but we've got Randolph, Deontay, Earl, and Chris that are helping us as volunteers. And CCTV, like so many community media centers, is largely volunteer driven. Again, you're seeing the sun here. I'm going to call it the moon probably a dozen times today because that's what my frame of reference is. This is the first total solar eclipse that I've seen, having grown up in Indiana, since I was a kid, and we didn't have all the tools. So the pinhole camera that Brad talked about earlier, I made a pinhole camera when I was a grade schooler, and again, it was definitely more than 20 years ago. You saw me earlier in the show, and you can attest to that. The moon continues its revolution around the Earth, and we continue our revolution around the sun, which the combination of which is increasing the coverage of the moon over the sun. We're not going to show you right now, but as we start to see changes on the ground, as we start to see the ground get darker, Sharam will be showing us some pictures there, and actually we're bringing it right now. And what a terrific picture that we've got here. There are a lot of hot air balloons in Salem, and you see a lot of them. Actually, I have a neighbor only a couple blocks away that owns a hot air balloon, and we're seeing a hot air balloon up right now over Salem. That's a really beautiful shot. Probably a little bit, pretty much over the center of Salem, not the downtown, but a little bit closer out to the interstate. Our interstate traffic, again, we showed you the traffic shots earlier. Our interstate traffic is light. The interstate traffic was heavy earlier, but right now mainly only about the fairgrounds, and it looks like we're about ready to lose our hot air balloon friends. Again, thank you for joining us. We're going to stay here all the way into totality and then all the way back out as the sun is revealed again by the movement of the moon. A rare opportunity. I think Brad and Tim have already told you that the next time in the United States is the year 2024 when there will be a total eclipse. But for those of us in Oregon, we're going to be the travelers for that if people choose to go. Starts in Texas and exits actually I think through the Maritime provinces in Canada. I want to thank our friends for joining again from, I was going to say around the United States, and now even from Madrid. And we have to wonder, could that be Christina's mother? And everybody at CCTV knows who I'm talking about. Our two-year intern, Christina Martinez, who recently married, so if she has a different last name, I'm not in the know. Hearing an emergency vehicle in Salem, but I have to say that everything has been so placid. Probably the biggest impact on CCTV was that the Starbucks that's next to us had a 90-minute wait time earlier today because of the Salem police. And we're taking a look now at what's going on as a lot of people come up here and take a look at what we're doing, and you can see they have their glasses. These are all friends of ours that work in the Salem Information Technology Department, and they're protecting their eyes as they take a look. This is something that I want to thank our staff and volunteers. This is something that we were doing on Saturday. We did about 8 hours of setup, and this is going, we think this is going pretty smooth today. And we certainly hope that you're enjoying our coverage of the full solar eclipse. But this was 8 hours of work on Saturday in order to bring our cables up and alter our studio to have these pictures. We had hoped to show you shots from Portland State weather balloons that are going up in Corvallis of all places, which certainly is a chunk of distance from Portland State. But apparently that's not going all so great. So we're going to stay here in Salem just about all the time. And it looks like we're moving our way on. We're a little closer to half. But if we look time-wise at 9:44, we actually are getting pretty close to the halfway mark. We're 38 minutes in and it's 1:17, so I guess this is almost exactly the halfway mark. If Brad and Tim are still on, you're welcome to join me.
Yeah, we are, Alan, and we were just talking about that ourselves. As we were on break, I was standing up looking around at the nearby parking garage, and there are people up across there. I'm looking at the Salem, I think it's one of the Willamette University buildings. There's somebody up on top of the building there. They're taking a look around. And over at Salem Hospital, there are some folks up there looking around as well. And so one of the things I was going to ask Tim about was to talk a little bit about his experience in 1979 with the last solar eclipse. So just tell me, where were you? What was it like? Kind of what was your experience with it? And anyway, just take it away.
Sure, I can do that. So I was attending University of North Dakota in Grand Forks, and in 1979, and the path of totality was north of Grand Forks. It was about 97% total in Grand Forks, but not total. So we drove north to Winnipeg, which was dead center in the path of totality. I think my mom and dad and a friend of mine and a couple other folks, we all went up there. We found a park and we set up in a park. And this was February in Winnipeg. And if you've ever been to Winnipeg in February, you know it's cold. So it was very cold. I think it was below zero that day. And we set up and we started watching the eclipse, and it was quite an experience. You could see the sky as the moon came further and further across the sun. You could see the sky starting to darken in that same direction, and eventually you saw the shadow approaching us on the ground, and then we had totality. And I remember the streetlights came on, the birds stopped singing. It was just a eerie, amazing experience. It was one of the most amazing sights I've ever seen in my life. And it lasted, totality there was a little bit longer than this eclipse. I think we had it for about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that.
Right.
And it was just an amazing sight. And I had a Yashica single lens reflex camera, and I was taking pictures during totality, and it was so cold my camera froze. The shutter froze open. So I couldn't take any more pictures, which was fine because that freed me up to just watch it, and that was actually probably more amazing than the photos I got. So during totality, if you are in the path of totality, don't waste those 2 minutes of totality. It's a pretty amazing experience. You see that corona of the sun spreading out around the moon in all directions. It's quite the experience.
Yeah. Now you gotta know, having somebody from North Dakota say that it was cold is really a tell. So.
Well, I wish we had our friends from Bismarck joining us today, and maybe they are. Mary Van Sickle. There's actually only one community media center in the state of North Dakota, and it is in the capital, and they do a terrific job. Now, one of the things that Brad and Tim, I don't know if you talked about, which when you're in the total path, is the speed at which the shadow of totality reaches you. And I understand that it can be anywhere from 1,500 to 2,400 miles an hour.
Right.
And is that right? And around 1,800, and that would explain why that fits in perfectly with the math of a 90-minute total from coast to coast.
Right, because the Earth you look at people in the ISS, the space station, they circle the Earth about every 90 minutes. And that's the rotation speed of the Earth.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, yeah, and it's actually the speed of the moon in its orbit going across the sun is the actual speed of the eclipse. So the moon makes one revolution around the sun every 28 days. The moon is 238,000 miles away from the Earth, so somebody else can do the math.
Right. And I think also it's interesting, considering that the sun rises in the east and so does the moon rise in the east, the question would be, why does the solar eclipse go from west to east instead of east to west? And that's all has to do with the mechanics. I don't think I've ever heard of an eclipse that goes east to west.
No, because the moon only orbits one direction, right? So it can't happen the other way around. Yep.
Right. And in your list of thanks for all the people, Alan, we cannot forget Mr. Bindi. Mr. Bindi's here with us today as well, with his sunny disposition.
And truly the most important part of the crew altogether.
Yeah.
So there would have been no way. But again, I want to thank everybody. This is so much fun to do this. And I want to thank pretty much the same set of people that are working the production today for spending the 8 hours on Saturday that allow us to have good coverage today and for things to go right. That's a pretty substantial amount of setup time, but we did a pretty substantial amount of setup. So again, we're appreciating that you're watching us either on TV, on Facebook, or YouTube. I think we're at about 300 people on YouTube right now, and we appreciate that you're watching our coverage of this. Brad and Tim, it's so good that Tim flew in from Minnesota, and Brad, we know from his days of helping CCTV, they're able to talk about this. What a rare and what a cool thing. And in Salem, it's been the talk of the town now for at least 2 months. So it's so great to actually be here on Eclipse Day.
Oh, I have been waiting for this day for years, Alan. I would say one of the reasons I moved to Salem was so I could be in the eclipse path, but there was never any doubt in my mind I was going to be here or somewhere along the eclipse path on today. And it's it's really a pleasure just to be here and to be enjoying this with you all. And yeah, there's a great shout out to all the crew because they have worked really hard. We were up here on Saturday getting all the cables strung and getting everything set up and doing a test shot, and it's just a dedication to their abilities. You know.
Yep, definitely.
So we let's see. So what else should we talk about this morning? Well, we're at 50%. You know, it seems like time is just flying by. We got what's it? Just
One thing we could talk about is why there isn't an eclipse every time the moon orbits the Earth. Why doesn't it come in between the sun and every time it orbits? And of course
Right.
the reason is because the moon's orbit is tilted slightly with respect to the sun, the
like
Earth's orbit around
5
the sun.
degrees or something, right?
Yeah, so it has to just happen to intersect the plane of the sun's orbit as its new moon, as we call it, as it passes
Right.
in front of the
Right.
sun. So those are the only times we see an eclipse.
It'll be interesting too is that I think the International Space Station is going to be able to watch the eclipse as it happens here as well.
Brad and Tim, here's an update, by the way, and pardon my interruption. I was just going to tell you that 600 people are watching on YouTube, but it's now 908. So we welcome everybody to watching your coverage, and we're going to try to bring you something special here. There's some weather balloons that are taking overhead views. They're up about 18 to 20 miles, between 90,000 and 100,000 feet. So Mike on our staff right now is working on getting the ability for us to show you these, and we're going to show you the sun at all times as we see the moon going farther and farther into the sun's path. But we're going to work to try to show you some weather balloon feeds here too. I think they'll be really nice.
Yeah, and we're you know, the whole thing about this is just how we are just going to be getting just how I don't know, spiritual this whole thing is. You know, as we get closer and closer to, you know, you talk about it like in history. You know, the Chinese would describe eclipses as the dragon eating the sun, or for Mayans it was jaguars, I believe, were eating the sun and digesting the sun and then coming it back out. So this is almost like a rebirth event for a lot of people, and there are people who's come out of this completely changed by it.
Well, here's a question for you that I'd like to see if you can answer. Do sunspots change rapidly? It looked to me like there was activity in the lower, almost lower center, but a little bit to the left of the sun that we hadn't seen earlier. And maybe this is Tim's bailiwick. Are we seeing things that could have rapid change there? Areas that go from dark to light in a matter of minutes?
There can be changes that quickly. Typically they last, you know, a number of hours or even days. But yeah, they can change fairly quickly.
Yeah, and you'll notice that sunspots, when they appear, you can see them appear and disappear, but they will also rotate across the face of the sun. And that's not from them rotating, it's because the sun itself is spinning. And so you can actually observe and watch the sun's rate of spin based on the sunspots.
Yeah, you don't normally think about the sun rotating just like
Right.
the Earth, but it
Right.
does. Yeah.
Right.
And the moon does too, but the moon rotates at the same speed as it orbits the Earth, so the same side of the moon always faces the Earth.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting.
Right. And so what is it? It's 10,000 years that it actually takes. Once in the heart of the sun, once a nuclear fusion reaction releases light, it takes something like 10,000 years for that light to actually reach the surface of the sun, because of the intense gravity of the sun actually keeps the light from escaping the point. Now, that's probably something we should start talking about, because now we are getting into, we're probably more than 60% occultation of the sun now, and as we start getting closer towards the end, we're going to see some interesting events happen. One of those is that as we get down to what we call second contact, which is just the few seconds that occur just at the end when the moon almost has totally covered the sun, you'll see a couple of things happen. One of them is what they call the diamond ring effect, and the diamond ring effect is basically just a point of light that is just one of the last pieces rays of the sun, and then you'll see it break up. The diamond ring will break up into one or more little tiny points of light, and those are called Baily's beads. And Baily's beads are the result of light passing over the surface of the moon between mountains and valleys in the moon. So they were actually first using the eclipses to actually measure the height of mountains at the moon and the valleys, and to get an idea of what the surface topography was like, because you know that you could actually see it in 3D. So that was a pretty interesting event. And let's see, what else we talked about?
Well, we're taking a look here at the downtown a little bit again,
Oh, yeah.
and we're still seeing a lot of light. There's a look at people up on the roof of the Elsinore Theater with the Mattingly mural there in the lower part of the frame. It's not going to be too long until we start to see a loss of light at the ground also. Brad, what are you seeing up there right now?
Right, we are starting to see it starting to get dimmer up here.
Yep.
You know, it's you can definitely tell. You know, one of the advantages up here is we have a white roof that we're working against, and so you can see the shadows are starting to get a little dimmer, and
It's comfortable for me without sunglasses now, looking at this white roof, and it wasn't before.
right earlier, yeah.
There are a couple things we want to prepare people for too. I don't believe you've done this already. During total, we're going to be silent. We want people to enjoy this experience, and we also want to enjoy it too. So going into total, you'll see us go off of microphone. You'll also see when we hit total, we're going to show you a little bit wider shot. Because Brad and Tim, I don't know if you've talked about this, we have a rare chance to see Mercury, which is, its orbit around the sun is so tight. We have a rare chance to see Mercury and Mars, and actually the star Regulus, because the sun's not so bright. In fact, it's not bright at all. So
Right.
that's something that we'll be showing people right when we enter into totality.
Right, and you're right, Alan. We're going to, I think, about 15 seconds before totality, just as we get to the diamond ring effect and the Baily's beads, we're going to go into silent mode, and then I think we're going to take a shot with the Ursa camera of the totality event, and then in that time I will be taking the sun filters off the telescope, and we'll be able to take a look at the close-up of the view with the telescope.
And the crew will be running outside in shifts, so we all get to see it at least a little bit at a time, and to enjoy it. Something else we may talk about a little bit later on the partial on the way out, is there's a way for people to be involved. You don't have to wait for an eclipse to be involved in astronomy and in science. And science occasionally gets a bad rap, but science has helped us understand amazing things and make amazing improvements. And astronomy is something that's just, well, we're totally interested in. In Salem, we have the Night Sky 45 Astronomy Club, and I was thinking that we might talk a little bit about clubs, some of the activities of clubs, when we start after we exit the full eclipse and are exiting, then taking our hour and 11 minutes on partial.
Right, yeah, the Night Sky 45 Club is a great way for people to learn more about our local solar system and the stars and the planets. And they have some wonderful events where they go out and bring their telescopes, and they will set up, and you can go out and look at the stars and the sky, and have them help you point. They'll help, very, very helpful, very friendly people. And some other events, like one of my favorites is always to go watch meteor showers, you know, like the Perseid meteors, which is just concluded. In fact, Tim and I, when Tim was moving from North Dakota to Flagstaff, he and I drove his
67.
The 67
Rambler Rebel
Ghetto
station
cruiser,
wagon.
the Ghetto Cruiser, and we were in Dead Horse Point State Park, and we were laying out in Dead Horse on our sleeping bags in Dead Horse Point State Park, completely dark, watching meteors for the Perseid meteor shower.
That was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and here's the latest on what we're getting on our reach. We now have 1,300 people watching on YouTube. This is from Kirimi, and Kirimi's off-site because she's working the rest of the week, but she's handling our social media. And Kirimi, thank you for doing this. It is so cool. 131 on Facebook with 2,100 total views and 102 shares. So as Kirimi says, this is awesome. And that's exactly how we feel about this, that we can help our community and people in other communities share this total. Not happening here very often, and it's a wait to see another total in the United States. So Brad and Tim, thank you for being here because we're reaching quite a few people today.
Well, it's wonderful to be here, Alan, and we are just a little more than 15 minutes away from totality, and we are probably now at what would you say, Tim? 75%?
Yeah, I would say
better?
it's close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just amazing the inexorable migration of the sun across the moon, and it's definitely getting darker up here.
Let's see if we can,
Yeah.
Soha and Sharam, let's see if, and this is a tough thing because cameras always want to average out light, right? So as it's bright, they want to close down and make the exposure always right. But I wonder if we can get a shot in the downtown and show that how the light actually, we are getting a reduction of light into the downtown. And I'm couching that because it's a tricky thing to do. But yeah, that is not as bright as we saw earlier today. Thank you for that shot. Again, we're looking almost due north from CCTV, past our Starbucks and up north on Church Street there. A beautiful day in Salem, a beautiful day to be in Salem, but we're getting closer. It's like Brad's making a minor adjustment there on the telescope camera, the telescoper camera.
Yeah, sorry, Alan, I should have warned you about that.
No, that's all right.
Just as we're getting closer to the edge here, I'm changing the ISO settings and the f-stop settings a little bit to get make sure we're getting a good amount of light. Is that looking good for you guys?
I think it looks terrific down here.
Okay. Yeah, auto exposure only works so long, even with today's technology.
And again, we're getting quite a bit of wind up here, so the image might be shaking from time to time.
Yeah, it's not just our excitement.
Well, we can return to the larger shot of the sun, Soha, if you want to do that. Thank you for giving us a look at the downtown. And I don't think I've ever said this term in my life, but we have a crescent sun right now.
And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the increase in the wind is the decrease in the sunlight affecting the heating effect.
Yeah,
You know?
as I was saying, when I was in 2012, when I was watching an annular eclipse, I was at Great Basin National Park in eastern Nevada, which is as desolate and as dry and as cloudless as you could hope for. And then just about as it got to this point, it started creating cloud. Clouds started pulling in, and when I got to about 10% remaining, it just completely went overcast. But I don't think we're going to have that problem today. You know,
It doesn't look like it. It looks pretty clear still.
You know, we have those cirrus clouds that are up there, That really. Now I can say that looking at those cirrus clouds, you can see that they're more. You can see more of them. Now normally, you know, when the sun is full out, they would be totally burned off, but as it's getting dimmer, you can see the clouds becoming more noticeable. And let's see what else we're looking at. So you look out at to the east, and it's still bright. You look out to the west, and it's getting dimmer. So it's just like watching nightfall, but in the opposite direction.
We're seeing now a picture of the sky with clouds. Unfortunately, those are few and far between, and we
Yeah.
certainly want them to stay away from our viewing angle to the sun.
That one looks like a salamander.
The jet contrail?
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention that we noted that we had an airplane go through the shot with the sun earlier, and only about 5 to 7 minutes ago with the Crescent, a general aviation craft. I don't know if you noticed that because there's a lot of glare on your monitor. We had a general aviation craft cross the path of the sun. So somewhere around the 10 o'clock mark in our recording, we have another recording of a plane going through the shot. We close a lot of our athletic events on a shot of what we now call moon jet, because a jet that actually, we had a shot of the full moon, and by coincidence a jet went through the shot. And no, we didn't Photoshop either one of them.
Wow. You know, I just noticed that it just seemed to dramatically drop. I mean, it was just like just like a step where it dramatically dropped. And now we're looking out. Now, so we're looking off to the west, and we're not seeing any clouds off to the west. But when we look out to the east, you can see the stratification in the cirrus cloud layers.
And
as
we
it's
are
going
just,
along.
oh my goodness, what a beautiful shot that is.
Oh, there you go. So there's the diffraction effect from the leaves. Oh, really nice shot.
Yeah, good job, Sharam and Sohan, bringing that to us. And now we're almost to 1,600 viewers on YouTube. So we want to welcome all of you. And we're staying through totality and then actually all the way out through partial. We'll be here on until noon. But the exciting part is getting closer right by the minute. We are now, we're now only 9 minutes, about 9 minutes away from totality.
This is where the fun starts.
Yes, it does. The birds will start to get a little confused and think it's nighttime.
And it's really, you can tell it's really getting cooler up here now.
Yeah, it has. Temperature has dropped.
Yeah. Where's that coffee? Oh.
Our funny coffee story of the day is we're now right next to a Starbucks, and the line to Starbucks was very long. So I tried to do an online, couldn't go online, so I called them up, and the Salem police had ordered so much coffee, they said it was going to be a 90-minute wait. So we went to a different Starbucks downtown. But it's, speaking of coffee, I have a feeling that a lot of coffee has been consumed today already, and a lot more will be. Well, for Brad and Tim, I'm going to go off microphone now and headset as we get ready for the changes that we're going to do in the control room, and also to be able to free up everybody to see at least a little bit of the totality. I'll be back after total. Thank you both so much for being here and making this a nice experience for the people watching on television,
Sure.
on YouTube, and on Facebook.
Sure, you want us to just keep on talking?
Keep
No.
on going as long as you want to up until total. But you can also take break, because the experience right now, the viewing experience, speaks a lot for itself.
It is a lot of fun just watching it change, because it's starting to change quite quickly now.
Yeah. We're just now 7 minutes and 20 seconds away from totality.
And it's getting dim enough, it's tempting just to look up at it, but don't do that without the solar glasses on.
Right.
Yeah, I actually spoke to a guy He was probably 60 years old, maybe a week ago. And he said about 40 years ago, 50 years ago, he was a young boy, a teenager maybe, and he stared up at the sun during an eclipse, and it burned a hole in his retina, and he still has a blind spot to this day.
From that,
So
from
that, yeah. So it's not something you want to mess with. But it is definitely noticeably darker now.
Yeah, rapidly getting darker. And we're about like probably 90% now.
Yep. It's quite the thin crescent sun right now.
6 minutes to go. The wind is still blowing. I'm wishing I brought a jacket now.
I'm thinking I'm glad I wore long pants. I was thinking of wearing shorts because it's going to be so hot today, but it's chilly up on this roof right now.
Yeah. I think it's. Yeah, I think the high today is here is supposed to be 92 degrees, but I'm guessing it's probably 70 some now.
Maybe even in the
cool
high
chiller
60s.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Tim, you always were saying you want to be able to work in some shade today.
Well, according to my weather app, it's 70 degrees in Salem right now.
Ah,
But I'm not sure how
did I?
often that's updated.
It's close enough.
Yeah, close enough.
I'll call it. 4.5 minutes to go.
Wow, that is quite the view, Brad.
I am going to get out and actually take a look at it when we get to totality.
Yeah, you need to do that. I can see it from here because I'm sitting far enough to the edge.
With your glasses
With
on.
my glasses on, that's
Yeah,
correct.
okay, right. Okay, we are 4 minutes. Wow, it's just amazing. Just suddenly, you would think that it just gets darker a little at a time, so you would hardly, almost like you wouldn't notice it, but it just comes in little bursts, and it just goes funk, it's down like 10%,
Yeah.
and boom, down another 10%.
That might be our minds doing it, but I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about might be my photo gray sunglasses. But now it's just.
I feel like I have
It's
really
it's-
dark sunglasses on right
yeah,
now.
it's getting really close to like a twilight. Wouldn't you guys say?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. And again, as we get close to totality here, you're going to see as just the last thin crescent of the sun starts to disappear, you'll see what's called the diamond ring effect, which is the last little bit of sun and that will break up into what's called Baily's beads, which are the sun as it's peeking through the valleys of the moon and being blocked by the mountains of the moon. Okay, about 1 minute 20 seconds, and now it gets really dim. That's not us imagining it.
It's just dim.
And I remember, you just got to keep your glasses on.
For another minute or so.
Yep. We're 1 minute away from totality. "30 seconds. And you can see the sun just rapidly disappearing. And here we go. We're in totality.
Can you see it, Brad? You need to see this. Real time. Yeah, you gotta see this. Back on. Woo. That was amazing. Look at the birds. Oops. The camera, it looks like the camera's out of focus now. That's good, Brad. Perfect.
Okay, so Brad, can you hear me?
He's just coming back after adjusting the camera. Here's putting his headset.
Yeah, okay, I'm back.
That was pretty amazing, and we had a little bit of trouble on a couple of our images, but hope that we captured most of it for people. It was an amazing thing to see. The brightness of the ring around the sun was something that I didn't expect.
Yeah, the corona is really bright when the moon covers up the main part of the sun.
When the sun hits your eye, like a big pizza pie.
There was a lot of cheering going on during this. Now you're seeing the background here. You're seeing at the state capitol, the ground starting to light up a little bit. We're just surprised by how, Brad, what you told us, how fast the last few minutes of partial seemed to go,
Right.
and how lightning fast totality went.
Right.
I don't know if you heard it downstairs, but there was just as we came out of totality, there was a large flock of birds in the trees across the street, and they all started crying and they took off flying. I think it kind of freaked them out a little bit.
Starting to be a little bit more light on the downtown again here. And let's take a look. I know that at right before totality, it looks like we went to more than 2,000 people joining us. And Kirimi says, great job, and I feel exactly the same way. A great job by the crew, and really appreciate her promotion of this. One of the reasons that a lot of people around the country are able to see this is that there are so many communities that have vibrant community media centers like we do in Salem. So again, we are most appreciative of the centers who are able to either pull our feed, our internet feed, and put on their channels, but more frequently just to promote our YouTube feed on Facebook. And again, we have centers from a number of places in the country that are doing this today. And again, Massachusetts being the sometimes almost the alpha and omega with the franchise fee law they have in so many excellent centers. You know, Ashland, Foxborough, Northeastern, Peabody, and Somerville on Brattleboro in Vermont, Olympia in Washington, Sacramento and Santa Barbara in California, Gresham, Duluth, Minnesota, and then Campbell County, Kentucky, just across the Ohio River from Cincinnati. And we welcome our friends from across the country to what has been a really spectacular morning in Salem with the total eclipse. The first one visible in Salem since 1979, is that right?
That's correct. The same one that Tim saw.
And Tim in joining us from the Twin Cities. And Tim, thank you for coming to our community and joining us and helping today.
You are very welcome. This has been an amazing event. It's a one in a lifetime experience.
One of the reasons we were a little bit more ragged on crew and got shots of Brad working to pull the filter off of his camera before we got to the camera, and we'll have actually better images to put together when we put together a piece on this, a little bit more of the diamond ring effect from Brad's telescope camera, is that we were shifting because I thought everybody should have a chance to see the eclipse with the naked eye, and it was, again, the corona around the sun. It was terrific. It was so bright. This is not an annular eclipse, but I was right where you can actually see part of the sun, but it was still quite bright and very spectacular.
Yes, absolutely. And the corona, you can only see the corona during a total eclipse. You cannot, even during an annular eclipse, you can't see it. And one of the things to keep in mind is that there are satellites and there are ways that scientists and astronomers have of blocking off the sun so that they can look at the corona artificially. But you talk to any of them, they'll tell you that it's nothing like the real thing.
It's not the same.
And even more people have joined us on YouTube, and we hope you'll stay with us a little bit longer here as we see the moon's orbit, the combination of the moons and the sun's orbit continue, and more of the sun being revealed.
Alan, this is the second one I've seen, and this one still just gave me goosebumps. It was amazing.
Well, I think we all feel the same way. I was seeing Megan on our staff outside jumping up and down and clapping, and I think that was exactly the right thing to do. It was so spectacular. Now we're about an hour away from maybe just a couple minutes more than an hour away from the eclipse fully ending. And Brad, you say that's considered the fourth?
Yeah, so first contact is where we go from where the moon first contacts the sun. Second contact was just before totality. We've now just passed third contact, which is just when the moon exits and starts and then fourth contact is when the moon disappears completely.
Well, it's really something, but I do hope that somebody has scheduled to fly through the shot right when we're at fourth, right when the sun is fully visible again. Taking a look, just so everybody know, if you do need to be somewhere, the traffic in our community is still pretty good. There's some orange on the on I-5. But why would anyone want to get out now when you're looking at absolutely, if you're not on the road right now, why get out for the next hour and a half? This is still something very special. A little bit of traffic in the downtown on Ferry and Trade Streets, and of course Liberty and Commercial is where you would expect it, in State Street. The interstate traffic around the fairgrounds is also, there was a lot of viewing at the fairgrounds. And Interstate 5 looks like it's orange about as far as the eye can see. The frontage roads are okay. But in town, Interstate I-5 is orange. And again, if you don't have to, stay home and enjoy this. Occasionally, Brad gets a notification off of his telescope that it wants him to change his SD card, so you've seen those.
Yeah, it'll only the camera will only shoot for 30 minutes, so I got to stop it before then.
We can still hear some of the people in the background, especially when a lot of people are enjoying this event. So Night Sky 45, and president is Richard Berry, is that right?
That's correct.
And Richard was very helpful. We, just so people know, we started looking at this about 3 months ago, and already a lot of people already had plans. And some people, I'm so appreciative. It looks like we've lost our shot from the telescope briefly here. There we go.
Yeah.
So glad that Brad and Tim could join us, because a lot of people already had commitments, including some of the people at Chemeketa Community College. There we go. Thank you for pulling the on-screen display. But this has been a real treat to have you guys here talking about this, and the crew working hard to show people what we've got going on. We've gone over 2,000 YouTube views. Again, I hope some people are staying with us, because the exit of the eclipse, especially in light of what we've seen, is still a special time.
Yeah. And you can imagine in ancient times when they knew this would happen, but they didn't really understand why it would happen. And the interpretations they get to that the gods are now recanting on their threat to bring the world to an end. But as a reminder that they can end the world.
I remember there was a partial eclipse back in about 1963. I was just a little kid, and I remember watching the little crescent shapes on the ground through the leaves of the trees, and so that was kind of my first experience with a solar eclipse way back. Almost, I hate to think how many years ago.
Well, I think my first one was when I was growing up in southwest Kansas, and I went out with a sheet of welder's glass. I think it's like number 14 welder's glass you could look through, and I was watching the eclipse through that. I had an arc welder's helmet on, and I had the glass on the helmet, so I had to look kind of weird.
Good times.
Good times.
My daughter from Seattle just sent me a picture of the ground, of the little crescent shapes on the ground through the trees and in her backyard. So,
yeah, that was an excellent job saw on that guy's on catching those crescent shapes on the ground.
That's great.
Well, thank you for warning us about that. And we're hearing people thanking us for the program, commentary better than NASA. People on Facebook from Oregon, Washington, California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Colorado, Nevada, Ohio, Spain, and Italy. So special welcome to our visitors across the pond in Europe, where, not to go into any detail, but soccer has started again, so everybody gets to be crazy over in Spain, La Liga, and in Italy, Serie A. But welcome to join us for this special event. And I was just looking up this, I was trying to remember which explorer used an eclipse, and I'm seeing here that it was Columbus, but it was a lunar eclipse that he used to threaten people and to get his way.
Yeah, and as much fun as you have with this has been a great experience. Lunar eclipses are pretty magical in themselves, mainly because the moon is in its reverse order. I mean, the Earth passes between the sun and the moon, but the difference being that there's so much light reflected off of the Earth that the moon never goes completely dark. You know, it gets this really deep red or deep brown color to it.
It looks like a penny, a copper-colored penny.
Yeah, copper-colored penny. Yeah, and in fact, we just had what was the last year? A couple of years ago, we had 3 lunar eclipses in the same year.
That's right. Yeah,
which is a very rare event.
And the nice thing about a lunar eclipse is that everyone on Earth can see it. You don't have to be in a specific location on Earth to see it. It's visible as long as you have clear skies and it's dark, you can see it.
Right. Which was kind of the problem in Oregon because it was in the middle of winter, and that's kind of a bad time.
That makes it tough.
For cloud skies. Good time for cloudy skies, bad time for clear skies.
Yeah.
There's some birds heading south for the winter and then turning around and coming back.
I should let everybody know that Mike and I are on staff are big Pink Floyd fans, and if it weren't for nasty copyright laws, we would have been very tempted to be playing Dark Side of the Moon on a lot of the telecasts today, but we were not able to.
Great song.
Everything on Dark Side is good. And just got a text from our friend Nancy Richard in Plymouth, Massachusetts, saying thanks for the coverage. Nancy, longtime director of PAC TV in Plymouth. It's another terrific community media organization.
It's so great to see everybody joining from all over.
From all over.
It's a very cool thing. We had our national conference in Minneapolis in the Twin Cities starting on July 12th, formerly Salem's No Rain Day. Broken in 2006 when my daughter and I planned to tear off a roof that day, and then ending on Bastille Day. So we're able to see our friends from across the country. So many of them do a great job, and there are not a lot of community TV and media centers on the path. A lot of them on the path of partial, but I think we're probably the largest center on the path of total.
Well, I think, Alan, when we have that annular eclipse in 2034, it's going to be 2023.
There you go.
It's going to be easier to talk you into letting me borrow a camera.
Where's the annular visible from, Brad?
It'll start off of the southwest coast, I think Brookings, that area, and then crosses over Crater Lake, goes directly over Crater Lake, then through Lakeview, and then down into Nevada. And that's as far as I remember.
Well, maybe there will be a truck trip going on that day.
There you go. Well, Tim and I were already talking about it. So.
Yep.
And again, an annular eclipse happens when the moon doesn't quite block all of the sun's rays. So maybe the moon a little bit farther away from the Earth.
Right.
Yep, that's correct. Or the sun is, or the Earth is a little bit closer to the sun, or a combination thereof. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, the only other caveat to that, Alan, is it's in October. So October on top of Crater Lake is going to be chilly.
But will it be clear? That's the question. What is October typically like?
Usually pretty good up there.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I mean, see, you came the last time we went up. You came for a visit. We went there.
Was that September?
September.
Yeah.
And we drove up to the west rim of the lake, and froze our hiney corners off, waiting for the sun to rise.
It was definitely chilly, but it was gorgeous.
And that's the time you said that was the last time you were going to do that.
Just got a really nice text again from our friend Nancy Richard, who sent a picture which she may have captured off the screen of totality, and gosh, it's great, and it's a heck of a lot better than the picture that I took when I ran out the front door.
Well, as well prepared as I tried to be, I had a little handheld camera, and I was going out to take pictures of the corona, and I took 3 or 4 pictures and then sat back down, and then realized I had not put a card in my camera. So they were great photos. I have great memories of those photos.
I bet they were great, Brad.
Now, I wish I could say that I've never done that.
Oh.
It's just so exciting during totality, and you have such a limited time,
Now, wasn't there a totality, you may have talked about this already, wasn't there one in the 90s that was over 6 minutes? Not here, but it seems to me that I remember reading about totality on one solar eclipse that was a quite long period of time.
That sounds like we need to do a search on the internet.
That's
Yeah,
what
I-
I'm doing right now.
Okay, good. Yeah, they can definitely last longer. I'm not sure what the longest eclipse duration on record is.
Well, I don't know, but it says,
The longest one during the 11,000 year period from 3000 BC to at least 8000 AD will occur on July 16th, 2186, when totality will last 7 minutes 29 seconds.
we're going to be pretty old by that time, But the longest one that's ever taken place is July 11th, 1991. At 6 minutes and 55 seconds, and they say the solar eclipse in 2132 will be the longest until then, and then of course the longer one in 2186.
Yeah. So, and the reason for that is, of course, then the Earth and the Moon are close at their closest point in orbit, and the Earth and the Sun are at their furthest point in orbit. So the Moon appears quite a bit larger than the Sun in the sky, and so it covers it for a longer time period.
A supermoon eclipse,
Yeah.
or a subsolar eclipse.
Well, we've still got about 1,200 people watching on YouTube and 60 on Facebook. We had 5,300 total views on Facebook. Our high on YouTube was about 2,200. Gosh, so great that people joined us, and just got something from our buddy Jerry Eichten in McMinnville, thanking us And they were checking in on MCM TV and then McMinnville. So Jerry, a terrific operation in a smaller community, showing where often community media is the most important because you have so little media based around your community and what's special to your community. So Jerry, thank you.
Yeah, during totality, I thought about just getting out my iPhone and taking a picture, but I knew that there are going to be so many better pictures taken through telescopes that I will have access to. I just wanted to look up and enjoy it.
Well, I looked up and enjoyed, but Tim, I actually also popped a picture, and it's not, my picture with my iPhone isn't that good. So I will enjoy seeing what others have done. It actually, the brightness of the corona, I have only a very small circle in the center, a darkness for the sun. But it's still kind of an interesting art piece, and I think that's probably what it's good for.
Well, and the nice thing is that you took it, and
Well,
you'll
that's
have
true.
the memories associated with taking it. So.
Well, I wonder if anybody forgets a solar eclipse, a total solar eclipse. It's an unforgettable experience.
Now, once you've seen one, you can't unsee it, and that's a good thing.
We're now probably getting to the point where, and I'm not suggesting that Sohar Shrom need to pick this up, but probably getting to the point where the ground is starting to really brighten up at this point,
Yeah.
and probably a lot of glare back up on our white roof.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, and it's just the inverse of when we went into totality, that it doesn't brighten in a slow gradation. It brightens in bursts, almost like it's, the sun, it's passing through a layer that's occluding it, and then it just disappears and goes away. And I can see, the clouds, the cirrus clouds that I mentioned earlier, that were kind of moving in, or not moving in, but they were more noticeable during as totality approached. They're now going back further away. And our good friends in Kentucky, well, this is coming your way. So,
Won't be long.
won't be long.
I think our Campbell County friends are probably going to be a little bit north of the totality, because I think the crossover between Tennessee and Kentucky is about mid-state there, and I think they actually have the longest period of totality at close to 2 minutes and 50 seconds, 2:49 or 2:48, something like that. But I know our friends in Campbell County are going to have a good partial, though, and they should be close enough to have quite a lot of light being blocked. So it reminds me of my worst sun joke. So I'm going to now do the sun joke, and I'll give you the response you got to say. So what I say to you is, have you heard about my summer vacation? I'm going to fly to the sun. And your response is supposed to be something like, we can't go to the sun, you'll be burned up, it's too hot. And I say, no, I'm going at night.
I thought you were going to say I'm going during the eclipse.
No, I'm going at night.
Yeah, Tim and I are both geologists by training. We have some similarly bad jokes, but we won't put those through to anybody.
You had better judgment than I did. If this is somebody's first experience with CCTV, welcome. We hope you liked it a lot. We hope that, I hope that the Night Sky 45 and the Astronomy Club folks are more interested in this as a way to get information out to people on television, YouTube, Facebook. And this would be great to have more programming based around something that I find really fascinating, astronomy. It's certainly welcome. And across the country, if you're not familiar with your community media center, Google it, take a look, see where the closest one is. Got terrific centers in so many states, and take advantage of the opportunity that you have to be a maker of a message, to be a speaker and more than a recipient, and a producer of information and not just a consumer of information. And that's a big part of CCTV's role, is to make sure that more voices are heard.
We had a small Gulfstream type jet just passing overhead, and I was hoping he was going to make a little more of a left-hand turn. He would have gone right in front of the camera.
Well,
Or
yeah,
the-
we need
so-
to get on the radio to the pilot there and say, come on.
Yeah.
I think everybody and our viewers at home and on the web and on YouTube can see that a lot more light up there behind Brad and Tim. So a lot more light reaching the ground now.
Yeah, I mean, looking out now, it looks like almost a normal day.
Getting close to that, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
If somebody were interested in astronomy and might not have a local astronomy club, how would you suggest that they of course, at the internet, with the web, you've got the world at your fingertips. What suggestion would you have for them getting started, other than maybe Google, but going beyond Google?
Well, there are several good magazines, like Astronomy magazine, that have sites. Their websites have good introduction to astronomy. Your local community college generally will have an astronomy class, or your local college will have an astronomy class that you can take. Another way is some of the national parks around here are known as dark sky parks, and they have astronomy programs. I know Crater Lake does. Lava Beds National Monument down by Klamath Falls does. Arches in Utah. There's several. Several of those will have classes.
And it doesn't take a lot of money. You can take a pair of binoculars, and if you have an app on your phone to track the stars and the planets, which you can get, I think, just about free, find Jupiter and take a look at it with your binoculars, and you'll be able to see 2, 3, 4 moons of Jupiter orbiting, in a straight line out from Jupiter with a pair of binoculars. Or look at the moon. It's or the little constellation Pleiades. It looks amazing through binoculars. So if you have a cell phone with the app, some kind of astronomy app on it, you can just go out in your front yard if it's not too light from the city lights and enjoy some of those views.
Well, that's a good point, and we also have parks close by where you're not going to have so much spill light from cities.
Right.
And I'm trying to remember the last time I saw the Milky Way, which, having grown up in a farm town in the Midwest, I could see all the time because there was no light pollution at all.
Yeah. You can also just get a recliner and go out in mid-August and watch the Perseid meteor shower. Doesn't cost anything other than a lounge chair, so you're comfy, and something to cover you to keep you warm.
That's the key, is to be lying down, because if you go out and stand up and stretch your neck and try and see a meteor, after 5 minutes you'll get discouraged and go in. You need to be able to lay out for maybe an hour. My daughter and I we're up along the North Shore of Lake Superior on it's the night of August 12th every year, the Perseid meteor shower. Lay down facing to the east-northeast, which is where they will radiate from. And if you have a complete unobstructed view of the sky, you can see 30, 40, 50, 60 an hour,
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are bright enough they leave a little vapor trail behind them.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
Tim, explain why that's an annual event, always on the same day.
Sure, yeah. What happens is, the reason the meteor shower occurs is because the Earth is passing through some dust in space, I think from a comet that went
Swift-Tuttle.
through. What was it?
Swift-Tuttle.
Swift-Tuttle, yeah, that's right. Many, many years ago. And that dust is in the same spot every year. So every year on the night of August 12th is when the Earth intersects it. You can see it for a couple nights before and a couple nights after, but the peak is the night of August 12th, early morning hours of August 13th every year.
Yeah, and as Tim mentioned, so most of the dust is just little tiny specks, less than a grain of sand. The ones that get like pea size will leave a vapor trail, and I'll never forget being up on top of Larch Mountain, if you're just east of Portland, And it's amazing too just how much elevation makes a difference, because you may only be up 800 or 1,000 feet, but you'll feel like they're passing right in front of you. And but I saw one that had a bright blue green tail, and you could see pieces of the meteorite coming off and leaving like sparks and kind of looking effect.
That is spectacular to see.
Yeah.
To see that, we call that a bolide meteor.
Right.
So yeah.
We just got a message from our good friend Deb Vinsel, who's in Olympia. They have a terrific community media station. They, like us, are a state capital, which is to a certain extent in a shadow of the larger cities in Washington of Seattle and Tacoma. And Deb congratulates us and thanks us. They had 96 parcel, but we were able to send them for totality. And Deb says it's a testament to the power of community media to step up in a community without broadcast affiliates, to be sure the story was told from your community's perspective. So thanks to Deb, she's a trooper. I actually met Deb when she started in Ohio in 1983. I like to say we were both 4 at the time, though it's not quite true.
Sure you were.
It was a bizarre story in which my wife's older brother worked for a defense contractor, and he left a calculator, special calculator, pre the days where your phone can do everything in the world. He had a special calculator he needed for his job. He'd been visiting. Their parents lived just outside Indianapolis, so we drove it down to him, and I drove by this Warner Amex cable building, and it had a second floor, and I thought studio gotta be. And that's where Deb was. So Deb's doing a terrific job in Olympia, and again, our friends across the coast know you work so hard to do this every day for your communities to be the most important thing. So we thank you, Deb, for your kind words and also your hard work. And again, so thrilled that so many people across the country were able to see the total eclipse that we saw here.
Oop, there's just another.
Looks like we're probably over halfway recovered now.
Well, I
Back to
think
normal.
I'll prepare us all now. I think we had scheduled to go till noon, but realistically, after we reach stage 4 and we have a full view of the sun again, this is something that we may stop unless there's a reason to keep going, and this is something we're actually talking through right on the show. But Brad and Tim, let me know if there's a reason we would stay on after we see the full emergence of the sun again.
Okay.
No, the exit is pretty much a mirror image of entry.
Yeah, and from time to time, Soha and Sharam, feel free to cut in some shots of the ground, which we're probably back. The Mattingly mural is always my favorite part because it's part of the historic Elsinore Theater. But Salem should be now, even though we're only a little over halfway back in, the level of light on the ground, yeah, is pretty bright out there. So Sharam's giving us a shot here from Church and Church Street in the Starbucks parking lot, and there's Ferry Street. Nobody on Ferry Street right now. Beautiful day in Salem, beautiful day in so many parts of the country today. We've all been sweating this out. What's the weather going to be like on August 21st? Salem historically has a 71% chance of clear skies on August 21st, which means, of course, 29% of the time life isn't so good. And we've had such a hot, dry summer, a record high temperature summer, and so many fires. And the fires threaten viewing in a lot of areas. We'll hope for our friends in eastern Oregon that in the Madras and Prineville areas, where there are so many people going to view the eclipse, that the fires didn't block that possibility today. And again, traffic in Salem is very light, but I know that our friends in emergency management, Roger Stevenson at the City of Salem, Ed Flick, Marion County, and our public information officers, Mike Gotterb at Salem and Jolene Kelly at Marion County, would want to let people know that there could be a lot of people leaving town. The idea was that people came to Salem and some of the surrounding communities over the period of about a week. but in the next 24 hours, both this afternoon and evening and tomorrow morning, could be leaving to go home. So to be just very careful again, travel when necessary, but be aware that there could be a lot of people out on the roads and people that are not all that familiar with our streets and our unique system of one-way streets, just like every other place has.
I'll look for it. Okay. That way, Alan, up. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, Ellen, it's getting bright enough. I just put my sunglasses back on.
Yeah, well, that white roof, and it's amazing that we've been in this building now coming up on 9 years, and so the white roof isn't quite as white as it used to be, but when we first came up on it, and when the building was still under construction, but the roof in place, in July and August, it was blinding. So sunglasses are a necessity.
Yeah, I can just imagine.
Now, what are people going to do now with their solar glasses? I don't think that probably a whole lot of people are interested in looking at the sun all that much other than eclipse day. What should people do with these solar glasses?
Well, that's a good question. I suppose most of them will just end up in the trash or as souvenirs. But yeah, I mean, you could certainly keep it to just take a look at the sun periodically. It's kind of cool to be able to see that orange orb of a sun in the sky just by looking up. You know, and there may be another partial eclipse in their future if somebody wants to have a pair of these glasses available.
You can guarantee, though, they're pretty cheap now.
Yeah, they're pretty cheap now. In fact, I've got a couple if you're interested.
So we're getting here a message from our friend Jim Palmer and Camille Bartlett in Peabody. And anybody who's from Massachusetts or has been to Massachusetts, please say Peabody. Thanking for us for our coverage. And they're just getting ready to go into partial there right now. So they're breaking away because they're doing their own partial. They expect about 63% in Boston. So thank you, Jim and Camille, for that good message, and hope your partial is terrific and not blocked at all by any facets of weather.
Now I'm going to stop the camera for just a second while I get a new. I'm almost at 30 minutes. If you do have one comment about the eclipse glasses, if you do have them and you've taken them out of their protective sleeve, hopefully, and used them, is to don't keep those. Keep only the ones that are unopened, because the fact is that if you scratch these, they're just little thin mylar lenses, and if you scratch them in any way, they become completely useless as far as watching the sun, and you really don't want to take any chances on that.
Throughout history, so much importance. Of course, the sun is totally important to us for heat and the ability to have chemical reactions in life on Earth. And the moon's so important. And I was mentioning to Brad and Tim before the eclipse, I was remembering the Star Trek Next Generation episode, Masaka is Waking, Masaka and Corgano, the sun and the moon. So that's a terrific show. I guess for how many people interested in astronomy do you know, Brad and Tim, that didn't like Star Trek and Star Trek Next Generation?
Is there even such a thing?
I can't think of any. It took me a while to
to get into Next Generation, but it was a good show. I was kind of a pure Trekkie from watching reruns back in the 60s of the original, but I do like Next Generation as well.
I thought Next Generation was very thoughtful. I was thrown off by the first episode where Data is sitting up in the tree.
Oh, yeah?
And I thought, oh, this show's going to be terrible. And then it ends up that we watched it all the time and watched it in reruns and really liked the show a lot.
Well, yeah, you got to give a half a season to a season for those guys to kind of get each other. They're measuring each other and working together, but it turned out really well.
And in many shows, it's the first 2 years that are the best years, and then the writers go south or have a hard time coming up with new stuff. I thought they never did on Next.
Well, what I thought was interesting was that you look at it now and you can go, you look at those old series and they run 22, 23, 24 episodes in the season, and you don't see any of that now. I mean, this season's Game of Thrones is 7 episodes.
Yeah, remember when they didn't have to overly advertise to try to get viewers that the episode was going to be new?
Yeah.
There's like an expectation that we're going to have new episodes until we hit reruns in February.
Right.
And go through the summer.
Go through the summer.
Again, I want to thank Brad and Tim for handling this. It's a long time to be up there and be on camera, and hope you had a really good view of when totality happened.
Oh, it was great.
It was amazing.
I was taking, concentrating on the camera, and Tim takes the filter off and he turns around and he looks at me and he just motions with his hands, goes, get out of here right now.
Yeah, Brad was sitting under the canopy still. I'm like, you got to come out here and see this. We have a shade canopy because it's rather sunny up here, except during totality. So.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that the people at home won't know, when we set up everything on Saturday, and it was quite warm in the afternoon, and then I realized at the start of today at 9 o'clock you're going to be up there. It wasn't Saturday afternoon at 2. It's probably a little bit crisp.
It was definitely cooler than Saturday afternoon.
But it's warming up now.
Yeah, going to be a warm day today.
So I'm interested, because you're both interested in astronomy. You're interested in astronomy outside of eclipses. Eclipse is a special event. What are the kind of things that you look at? You've got telescopes. What are your favorite things to look at, to photograph, to track?
Well, I'm just a general photography person. I like to do landscapes, geology. I take way too many photographs, yanking off to the side of the road and making Martha White while I stand at a road cut and go, oh God, look at that reverse fault. Isn't that something?
Yeah, I love stargazing, and I really haven't done much astrophotography, but I have a telescope, small telescope, and I love keeping track of the planets, Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, and Venus goes through crescent shapes just like the moon does, and that's kind of fun to see in a telescope. Watching the moons of Jupiter, the great red spot of Jupiter. The Pleiades is a beautiful view in binoculars. So those are some of the things that I like to observe.
I should tell them about your first telescope.
Oh, yeah, my first telescope. Basically, it was a 4 1/4 inch reflector, which means it has a mirror at the back of the telescope that reflects the light up back to another secondary mirror mounted at a 45-degree angle, and then out the side of the telescope to the eyepiece. And I basically bought the parts individually and put it together myself. I made the base for it, and that little 4 1/4 inch reflector, I used that thing for probably 30 years until finally the mirror got kind of oxidized and I had to get rid of it.
Because it was aluminum mirror, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I bought this telescope a couple of years ago, specifically for the 2012 eclipse, and have enjoyed using it ever since. It's wonderful because it has a tracking feature, so that you're able to track what's going on.
Another nice thing about Brad's scope is that it's so compact and easy to use, and yet it's big enough to, to give you plenty of detail for doing planetary observations. So it's a nice scope.
Yeah, it's what's called a Schmidt-Cassegrain scope, and like Tim was saying, his is a reflector, and on a reflector the eyepiece comes out the side, and a Schmidt-Cassegrain, basically there's a hole in the middle of the back mirror, and there's a little mirror on the front, and so the light comes in, the tube bounces off the mirror on the back, bounces off again on the mirror on the front, and then it goes straight back in through the hole back to the eyepiece. So it's more compact and it's easy to use, but it's also a little more difficult because if anything gets out of alignment, then you've got to do what they call collimated to get it all back in line. But
That probably doesn't happen all that often, though, does it?
no,
Yeah.
no, not after I dropped it the first time. No.
They're pretty low maintenance.
Yeah, pretty low maintenance after that. But it works wonderfully.
But I would encourage, if someone's interested in astronomy, don't run out and buy an expensive telescope right away.
Yeah.
Just go out and get a star chart, lay down in the yard, get some binoculars, join an astronomy club, find out if it's something that you really enjoy doing before you spend money on a telescope.
Yeah, you can buy not a reflector, but a
Refractor?
refractor, yeah, for $120 that has tracking capabilities, and that's really helpful because when you're trying to look at stuff for the first time, you want to be able to locate something in the sky, and this well, we're going to see, but there's a little handheld device that goes with this, and once you've got it aligned, it has a whole database of all these celestial objects. So if you get it aligned, and you usually have to pick like 3 stars and you align it, then once it's aligned you can say, show me Saturn, and it will automatically point to Saturn or Venus or Jupiter or to the dog star or some other places. And
You
some
might
other
explain.
stars.
You might explain the dog star is Sirius and
Sirius. Are you
constellation
serious?
Canis Major. That's why it's called the dog star. Canis is dog, obviously. Yeah. And Sirius is the brightest star visible in the sky. It's not.
Right.
It's not the brightest as far as its light output, but it's close enough to the Earth that it appears to be the brightest star
Right.
in the sky.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Science.
My kids are, I'm sure, if they're listening, are just shaking their heads. Dad, we don't want to know that much information. Well, we're about 2/3 to 3/4 back out again, it looks like.
And Tim's been really good today. So in addition to the telescope, I'm recording video off the telescope, but Tim's also taking photos using the camera that's mounted on top of the telescope.
Yeah, it's working quite well.
We had an adventure yesterday, kind of trying to get this all tested and aligned and working, functioning smoothly.
Yes, we did. Yeah, Brad's telescope decided to start moving on its own without any instructions from us, and so it turned out to be a simple solution. But
Brief moment of panic.
yeah.
Well, Brad, we're going to take a look now at some of the traffic, and we've got really thick traffic on I-5. If you look at this is a northbound at Portland Road. Here we see Mission, the eastbound, and now taking a look at Kubler, and of course there were no cars out on here until just recently. So this is a real issue, and if you don't have to get out there, I mean, if you live in Salem, just stay here. And if you're from another community, pull off and have lunch. You know, because this doesn't look like any fun at all. Even here in West Salem, as we look at 219 coming in, and now if we look at Commercial and Center Street, Lancaster over at the mall, not bad at all in Lancaster. So in town, our streets are good. And it looks like people will be able to get around pretty easily. This, of course, is really close to a CCTV here. And this is just south of where CCTV used to be in the Salem Public Library. There's practically no traffic. And again, close to my house there on the south side where 12th Street comes in. This, you can't see the interstate, Kubler and I-5, because if you could see the interstate, this is what you would see. This is what it's like in Woodburn with people headed back to Portland or Washington. Here we see again Portland Road. So if it's this way, that's a 12-mile distance there. And this throws in another 4 miles, and the traffic's bad in all of it. And then of course the southbound traffic, people headed, it's bad all the way to Highway 34, well, it's 6 miles south of Albany. So again, if there's no need to get out, enjoy the day. It's really pretty. You're not going to work anyway. You could enjoy our feed for another 20 minutes, or you could just hang out in Salem, have a good time here. It'd be a whole lot better than spending time on the interstate in a stop position and burning gasoline.
Well, I hope part of that, Alan, is them having to listen to us, Tim and I talk.
You're driving everyone out of town. I wasn't going to say that, but I just got the feedback. And actually, Tierney's been doing a great job on this. She says, still 700 people watching on YouTube and 42 on Facebook. We appreciate you doing that. The staying with us here, and we're going to keep our coverage going at least until we no longer have any portion of the sun covered by the moon in its orbit. But it's moving pretty quickly now too, and just like the entry, I think it's going to be almost no time, and we're going to be saying see you again in 2024 if you're up for going that far.
I will. I will if you will, Alan.
Yeah. Well, probably not going to be working in 2024, and it's going through 2 areas where we've lived. 11 years in Austin, Texas, and I don't know if Austin's on the totality.
It is.
Oh.
Actually, I was my eye was on Fredericksburg.
Well, been plenty of times in Fredericksburg, and it's what time of year did you say it'll be?
It's in April, mid-April.
Oh, the pizzas won't be ripe yet. What a shame.
No, yeah.
However, it's a whole lot better to be in Central Texas in April than it is in August. And we have 11 years worth of proof on that one.
I was thinking Independence Rock.
You
know?
So I'm going to look at the solar eclipse path here, and maybe other people will be doing the same thing right now for 2024. Let's see, here's the path. Well, it's going to go through Bloomington, Indiana. My sister went to IU for a while. Uh-oh. So it looks like it goes up. Not able to pause this video, this annoying video here. There we go. So it looks like our next solar eclipse, the primary path is well, also it says Killeen, Dallas, Hot Springs, Poplar Bluff, on into Bloomington, Indiana, Cleveland, Buffalo, and then out through, the northern part of Vermont. So our friends, if any of our friends are watching from Chittenden Community TV in Burlington, out through Maine, which has a very active community television access of Maine, CTAM organization, and then out through the Maritime provinces into New Brunswick, and I'm not sure what else it'll cross. So that April 8th, sounds pretty good.
So something to keep in mind for anybody who's looking to thinking, seriously thinking about it, and all kidding aside, I am seriously looking at it, is to not only look at where, what part of the state it's in, but you have to, there are maps that you can look up that show the average cloud coverage. So like the main reason people gathered around Madras was because Madras, Oregon had the lowest or best percentage of highest percentage of clear skies. It was like 16% chance of, or like 11 or 16% chance of cloudiness, something like that. Here it was about 30%, which was really one of the second best places. So, but you can look at, there's a map that you can look at, and it'll show you what the average cloud cover is on that day. And one of the things that was, other things that was great about Salem and in Oregon is that it was very early in the day. You know, we saw our eclipse after 10 o'clock, and a lot of these places are out east are in the middle of the afternoon, early to mid-afternoon that they'll be seeing the eclipse. You know, and when that happens, then you get a lot of effects from the heat causing water vapor to rise and causing clouds and or thunderstorms, etc. to occur. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at it. And I'm not going to tell you where the best spot is because I don't want anybody else to know that besides me. I'm already calling the KOA and finding out how far in advance I can get my reservation.
That reminds me of, I live in Minnesota, and there are certain parts of the state where wild blueberries grow. And if someone is out picking blueberries and you ask them, oh, where did you get those? They will never give you an answer because they don't want you to find it and pick them all.
Right.
Well, that's like mushroom pickers, and they're maybe even worse on that. Looking at this also, it says that the next coast-to-coast eclipse is going to be August 12th, 2045.
Right.
And that will be interesting for a lot of people. It'll be Northern California to Florida. So it sounds like a path much like ours, but starting maybe 300, 350 miles south of here, but then having a pretty similar path as the one from Lincoln City out through South Carolina.
Right. And I was looking at the path for this eclipse, and it was really the one of the main eclipses that pretty much covers all of North America. You know, there was a little slice, I think, of Nicaragua or Panama, which wasn't covered. But, you know, Canada all the way down into Central America would at least see some effects from this eclipse. Some partial effects from this eclipse. And now one of the things about the eclipse in 2024 is that the path is going to be quite a bit wider and the duration is going to be quite a bit longer. If I remember right, when I was looking down in Texas, it was going to be something on the order of almost 4 minutes. Yeah, it's almost double the length of this eclipse.
Wow.
And then what they're talking about, I think, for the lengthy eclipse, also the next coast-to-coast one, I think, is going to be a lengthy one too.
Right. You mentioned about Tim mentions about not telling anybody about blueberries. It reminded me of my dad. I'd go on fishing trips with him and his buddy Archie, and Archie and Dad went off fishing one day, and made me stay home with my mom in the cabin where we were while they were off fishing. And this guy comes walking by and knocks on our door and says, you know, I've caught over my limit of fish, and would you guys like to have these fish? Because, you know, I don't want to get caught having too many fish. And Mom said, sure. And he handed us maybe, you know, half a dozen trout, which we cleaned and got ready. And Dad and Archie came back, and they had nothing in their catch. And they saw all those fish that we caught, and they said, where'd you get those? And I said, oh, I caught those over by the dam. And they went over, and they immediately got their rod and reel and went out and went fishing and going over there. And they come back and said, well, there wasn't anything over there. Well, maybe it wasn't over really by the dam. Maybe it kind of pointed off at some other random direction, and sent them off in another direction.
And they were believing this.
And my mom, actually my mom was the one cueing me in on what to tell them. So. And we had him guessing for a while.
Yeah, we were camping in Idaho once when I was a kid, and same thing happened. The guy in the campsite next to us came over and said, "Would you guys like some fresh rainbow trout? I caught so many, I can't eat them all." So we cooked them up for breakfast that morning. It was amazing.
Taking a look here at traffic again, we don't need to show, just for Soha, we don't actually need to show it. But again, in Salem, conditions are quite good, and on I-5, conditions aren't. So in Salem, realistically, other than a little bit of congestion, well, it looks like there's some congestion coming in on Highway 22 and a little bit crossing the bridge. Wow, that's never happened before. And then there's also a little bit of congestion heading out east on Highway 22 toward the Cascades. But I-5 is heavy northbound, and it's also heavy southbound after Mission Street. And it looks like there are a lot of people also on Cordon Road probably trying to hop around the interstate and on 99. And all of those highways have a chunk of people. So again, if there's no need to leave in a hurry, don't.
Yeah.
Yep, good point, Al.
Maybe we can see a little bit more of the downtown too. I'm not asking Sharon to do an online move, but it might be interesting to see just a little bit more downtown Salem. That is Brad moving his telescope. The sun has not decided to.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah, this is not dancing with the sun. I guess the
Weird.
sun's a star, so it could still be dancing with the stars.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, our sun is a white dwarf. Is that right?
No.
I don't
no,
think
it's,
so.
It's a type G yellow main sequence star.
How many types of stars are there?
You know, I'm sure we could look that up.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
from red giants and supergiants to white dwarfs and everything
brown
in between.
dwarfs.
Brown dwarfs, yeah.
And technically, Jupiter is just on the cusp of being a brown dwarf.
Mm-hmm.
It actually, one of the interesting things about Jupiter is it actually emits more energy than it receives from the sun.
So if Jupiter had had some more mass, it may have become a brown dwarf.
I think it was like if it had 10 to 100 times more mass than it has now, it would have become a brown dwarf.
So, how much more fuel, how much longer will our sun generate heat and light at the same rate it is now? I don't think we need to be worried about that, do we?
No, a few billion years at least.
That would be a real long-range plan that would be taking that into account.
Those are the eclipses I'm not sure I'd want to see if I lived that long. Alan, I'm going to stop this for just a second so I can reframe. Thank you.
It's great that you brought your telescope, Brad. It's such a nice shot. We actually have one camera that does a good job, an Ursa camera that we recently picked up as we're exploring the world of Black Magic Designs. What a great name for an equipment manufacturer. But this has been so terrific.
Well, the advantage, of course, of Brad's telescope is that it tracks the sun. You don't have to physically move it to keep up with, well, it's the Earth's rotation causing the movement, but without that, the image of the sun would move out of the field of view in a relatively short time.
Yeah, it really does. It takes almost no time at all. When I was in 2012, when I was doing the annular eclipse, I didn't have so on the camera, on the telescope, at the back of the telescope is a Canon SLR camera I have, and the weight of it was so much that near the end of the eclipse, it was getting close to the horizon. The eclipse was getting close to the horizon, so the telescope was nearly horizontal, and the camera, and the whole thing just started slipping. You know, it just kind of like slide out of view. And so I was with on one hand, I had a remote control with the camera, and I'm trying to take pictures, and with my left hand I've got the hand control for the telescope, and I'm making the motor go up, and so I'd adjust the field of view so the sun was at the top of the frame, and then as it started falling through the middle of the frame, I would take the picture. You know, so
You do what you gotta, right?
yeah. You just kind of got to go with it. But with Tim's help, yesterday we were able to get this kind of worked out.
We're seeing a great shot, one of my favorite pictures. I remember Mike on our staff took a picture right after the building was built, and he said it's a unique picture because this roof had never been here. One of my favorite shots looking north into the downtown. Salem has a pretty modest and small downtown, also a beautiful downtown, a lot of trees. You're seeing on the left-hand side the historic Elsinore Theater with the Mattingly mural, picture of Theda Bara as Cleopatra, and also W.C. Fields, Charlie Chaplin and his dog on there, and I believe in Theda Bara, somewhere in her headband, there's a picture of Marlene Dietrich. And you're seeing a little bit of Ferry Street and Church Street and the First Methodist Church, just a little bit north of us with that beautiful white spire. We'd show you a shot of the Capitol building, but there's so many trees, this is a much more pleasant shot to look at. Salem's a nice place to visit, nice place to live also. And you can see that the ground now is, even though there's a small amount of sunlight that's blocked by the moon, it's such a small amount that the daylight on the ground looks pretty normal to me.
Yeah, we're just about 10 minutes away from the end of the partial eclipse. Yeah, that mural is really nice, and wasn't it just 3 years ago or so that it was redone from crowdsourcing funding?
Absolutely was. There's a lot of us in the community that donated to that being redone. The mural had taken its toll, a lot of UV light on it, and some of it aged better than others. But the painter who came up from California was terrific. We actually have a short program, and I hope it's on our website, but I don't know how to tell people. And it also includes about a 1.5-minute time lapse. I think that's about the length of the time lapse on the mural being painted. So that was very cool when that happened, and I was one of the people that brought a camera up and set the time lapse on it on a number of days as they tried to beat the rain in September a few years ago.
Oh, well, it is, and the Elsinore is just an absolutely beautiful theater to visit and go to. They regularly have concerts. They have people have weddings there. They'll also have Chemeketa College, Community College, will do a film series where they'll show vintage movies there as well. So
Yeah, the whole Elsinore was restored a few years earlier than that. Time seems to fly by. Somebody would probably say, well, Alan, that was 15 years ago, and it may have been. But it's an absolutely beautiful theater. There's stained glass windows there. And now we're getting the reverse look here. Thank you, Soha. So we're getting to see this picture of Theda Bara in the center, one of Hollywood's first bad girls. Charlie Chaplin and his dog. W.C. Fields' head is over there on the far right, but actually it's the body of what's down there at the bottom left. So the Elsinore Theater is a great place. It's one of 7 places that CCTV can go live from, even though we are only a block and a half away. And it is a terrifically beautiful theater, and the mural is something special. Mm-hmm. I guess it's at Theda Bara's right ear is where Marlene Dietrich is. A left ear on our right side.
So just time check, we're about 8 minutes away from the end of the eclipse. Thank you for everyone who has been with us from the beginning and all the way through to the end today. This has been a lot of fun. This has been a magical day.
Well, and as of a little while ago, we still had 700 people on YouTube and 42 on Facebook. Yeah, this has been a really special day for us. One we've been thinking about for a long time. I know the Volcanoes are a Class D baseball team, or at least it's an entry-level baseball team. The owner found out about this date and scheduled a home game this morning and started it at 9 in the morning. I believe it was 9 or 9:30, so he would have the first solar eclipse delay potentially in the history of baseball. Maybe it's happened before, but I'll bet not very often.
It's never happened before.
So this is a special day, and it has now.
Yeah.
So this is a special day in our community, one people have been talking about for a long time. There were a lot of predictions that it would be a very difficult day. The hotels were sold out 6 months ago. People were thinking about renting rooms, make Airbnb style. Campsites were taken a long time ago. But have to say that the day has been absolutely spectacular and beautiful. There's only one downside, and that's to people that are trying to drive out of town right now. And again, if there's anybody thinking about this, I'd wait a little bit. I'd let the first rush go, because as I look at Google Maps here, the pretty heavy red lines north and south, and that includes 99W and also 99E. So not a pleasant drive back to Portland, Eugene, or Corvallis, or if you're going farther. So consider staying a little longer. Who would want to be anywhere else than Oregon in July and August? Right, Brad and Tim? Who would want to be anywhere else?
Well, I got to really hand it to Tim. You know, he came out specifically to watch the eclipse, and when he was kind of volunteered by the volunteer to participate today, and he's done just a really great job. It's really been, it's been a few years since he and I have seen each other, but old friends never die. Let's hope. And I've just really, Tim, I just want to say thank you very much for coming out here, and thank you for being willing to put yourself out and appear on camera here with us today, and just really appreciate it, bud.
Well, thanks, Brad. I appreciate that. It's been quite the experience. I wasn't sure what to expect, but it's been great.
And you've been a real trooper. Yes, we got in here and came in on Saturday and spent the day doing all the setup and the testing, and you were helpful, and you're just a good guy.
Well, thanks, Brad. I appreciate that.
And Sue, if you're listening to us out there, I'm glad you guys have been together for so long.
36 years, yeah.
36 years. I still can't believe I did your wedding photography.
Well, that's terrific, and the comments that we've gotten is just how good you two have been. And the original idea was that Brad was going to handle us, and when Tim got here, and I think the two of you suggested, and we'd already run up another line for a second microphone for when you guys might go off of camera. It's been terrific for the two of you, because you both know a lot about it. And having announced sports by myself before, I know it's no fun.
Yeah. So time check, we got 4 minutes until the end of the eclipse. So as we wrap things up here, Timothy, any final thoughts you have?
There's nothing like a total eclipse. That's
Of the
for
heart?
sure. Well, that too.
Well, I think we will stay on. Yeah, good time for final comments. We're going to stay on until we can see the whole yellow ball. And for people that don't live in Oregon, we don't see this yellow ball a lot in the winter months, although I think it's somewhat overstated how cloudy and rainy it is. But it's we like the summer months, and so it's a special treat. And Kirami lets us know that we've still got 600 people on YouTube and 30 on Facebook. So we're going to be with you probably another 5 to 6 minutes as we watch the eclipse complete. And we thank a long list of people who we need to thank that work extremely hard to make this possible. I'll just mention Charles on our staff started ordering equipment probably 2 months ago, the specialized equipment that we were going to need in order to do this. So a ton of people have worked really, really extensively to make the morning both a success and fun.
And that's it. It's just fun. Can't say enough of just how fun it is to be part of CCTV. It really is.
And this has got to be one of our, we've had some great moments. We're just starting this fall, our 28th year of programming, starting with high school football. In fact, this Friday we have a jamboree at West Salem High School. It's always good to get back out into our schools. And it's our 28th year, but we've never had an event like this. So this is something terrific. And we have a milestone section. I need to update the history section of our website. And an absolute certainty is that August 21st, 2017 will be on there as we take a look here, and we've got to be within just a couple of minutes now.
Yeah, we got 1 minute and 50 seconds.
Well, I hope people made some special wishes or something. It's like breaking the wishbone, right? When the solar eclipse was total, hope people made special wishes and then are able to take the steps to make those wishes come true. Because I know for me, it was incredible to see this. And again, Brad, it's so cool to have your telescope, because running out looking at it the naked eye, not what we're able to see, not able to see on camera. And we're still at the same people that are watching. Again, we're going to be with you another couple minutes. And right as soon as we go full on the sun, then we'll start a list of thank yous. And then we have the absolute fun of taking everything apart.
You do. You have the fun of there. Well, 1 minute.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll do your telescope. You don't want to trust us with your telescope.
Yeah, Tim's going to go down and catch it. I trust him. And he laughs. He laughs the knowing laugh. Yeah, I think I'll just stay quiet for the last few seconds here. About 30 seconds. That's it. We're done.
And I don't know if you were hoping as much as I was when I heard the engine of that general aviation aircraft. I'm saying, fly through the path, fly through the path between the camera and the sun. Any final comments from you guys before I start thanking a nice list of people?
No, I just thank you to all the crew and to Tim and for everybody, everything everybody did to help pull this off. This was pretty spectacular, and I think it went really, really well.
It was a great experience. I can't think of a better spot to have watched the eclipse. So thanks, Alan, and thanks to Brad and everyone else here.
Well, Brad and Tim, we thank you first of all because you've done such a great job on letting us, giving us the expertise and the lowdown on this. I also want to thank a number of people that are so helpful. Let's start with the City of Salem and Marion County and the great job they're doing, the great job they did helping our community prepare. Roger Stevenson is emergency management, but Mike Gotterba and Kenny, Kenny, this is terrible, but I've forgotten Kenny's last name, that handle public information. Marion County, we got Ed Flick in emergency management and Jolene Kelly in public information. Our volunteers today, and again, we're largely a volunteer-driven organization. So volunteers that we have include Deontay Gibson, Earl Drake, Randolph Miller, and Chris. And gosh, Chris, here's another bad thing on my part. I've forgotten Chris's last name. The staff, already mentioned Charles, who did so much on setup. Kirimi, who's handled the off-site Facebook, giving us the updates, did the promotion. Looks like it worked. We had a lot of people involved. Soha Bedi was our director today. Luis Mendoza is our studio whiz that put so much of this together. Sharam Chazizadigan did our camera upstairs. Mike Wilhelm is our tech whiz on computers, the downlinks, worked so hard on the setup. Megan McClure, our office and volunteers and support. We want to thank you also. We want to thank you, those who came to our community. We want to thank you for coming to our community. We hope you like it. Community is important to us. That's the whole reason CCTV exists, is because community is important. And people in our community, stay safe, stay off the roads just a little bit longer. Thank you for joining us. Hope this is a very special day in your life. I'm Alan Bushong. thanking you again on behalf of Capital Community Television for watching Salem's total eclipse in 2017.